All right, the next part of the lesson we're going to be talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel is when two unique lines, so that just means two different lines, have the same slope. This is going to be our symbol, so two vertical lines for parallel. And when we're thinking about the graphs will never intersect each other if they're parallel. Perpendicular is when two unique lines have the opposite reciprocal as their slopes, and they will intersect at a right angle if we're thinking about their graphs. And this upside down capital T is our symbol for perpendicular. So to kind of put what this paragraph is saying in symbols, if our slope is A over B, then the perpendicular slope, we flip that fraction around, so that would be the reciprocal, and we're going to make the sign its opposite. Okay, so that's what this is saying. So we flip the original and make it the opposite sign if we're trying to figure out the parallel slope. All right, so if we do some examples, it says graph a line parallel to the given graph. So we can choose any line that we want, but before we pick one, we have to know what the slope is. So we need to find what m is of the original graph. So to do that, this is one that's really easy just to count. So we're going 1, 2, 3 to the right, and then up 2. So again, slope is rise over run. So it's our vertical change over the horizontal change. So this will be 2/3 for that. So our parallel slope then, it has to be exactly the same. So if we're just going to graph any line that we want, we just pick a point, and we can put our point anywhere. I'm going to choose an easy one, so I'm just going to put it right here. Again, you can put your point wherever you want. Okay. Now it has to be the same as the slope. So wherever you put your point, we have to go up 2 and then to the right 3. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then we would draw our line through it. All right, our next one says graph a line perpendicular to the given graph. So again, before we do anything, we have to know our slope. So again, if we want, we can just count since it's pretty small, or we can find the points and use our slope formula. I'm going to choose to count. So we're going 1, 2, 3 to the right. So that goes on the bottom of our fraction. And then up 1, 2, 3, 4. So positive 4/3 is our slope. So that means that our perpendicular slope is this opposite reciprocal. So we flip our fraction over, so 3/4, and we're going to change the sign to be its opposite. So we're going to make this negative. Now again, it's just telling us to graph any line that we want as long as it's perpendicular to this line. So we're just going to put a point wherever we want. Again, I would pick an easy one. So I'm just going to pick 0, 0 because that's a nice easy point to graph. Okay. So our next point, we have to follow our slope rule. So that means that we're going to go down 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then to the right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to connect our dots together. So we should know, since we made these perpendicular, that this angle right here is a right angle. All right, let's try a little bit more specific examples. So our directions tell us to write the equation of the line with the given information and in the indicated form. Okay, so we have a couple different pieces to our directions. So we need to write an equation through -2, 1 and parallel to y equals -3x plus 1 in slope-intercept. Okay, so slope-intercept, again, that's the y equals mx plus b. So that's what our final equation has to look like. Now, if we want it to be parallel, we first have to identify this slope in this equation. So this is our m, that's our slope. And since we want parallel, our parallel slope has to be exactly the same as this, so -3. And it has to go through this point. So this is our x1, y1. So when I look at my given information, I have a point or excuse me, I have the point and I have a slope. So we start in point-slope form. Okay, so that's the y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. So we're going to substitute our information into that one first. So we would have y minus 1 equals negative 3 times a quantity of x minus a negative 2, so it becomes plus 2. And our final answer has to be in y equals mx plus b. So that means that I have to solve for y. So we're going to start by distributing. So y minus 1 equals negative 3x minus 6. We're going to add 1 to each side. So y equals negative 3x minus 5. So this would be our equation that's parallel to the original, and it goes through this point. All right, if we try the next one, so this time we're going through negative 3, negative 1. It has to be perpendicular to the given equation and in point slope. So point slope is the y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. Okay, so that's what our final answer needs to look like. So again, before we do anything, we have to identify the original slope. So again, that's going to be this. So this is our m. And this time we want perpendicular. So we're going to flip our fraction over. So 5 over negative 2. And then we would switch the sign. So that means that we're going to actually leave this as a positive. And then we're going to substitute into our equations. So again, this is our x1, y1. So we will have y minus a negative 1, so it becomes plus 1, equals 5 halves times x minus a negative 3, so that's going to become plus 3. And we want it in point slope form, which we are already in, so this is our final answer to this problem. Okay. So again, it's perpendicular to this one, and it goes through that point. All right, last example. So again, we're going to do perpendicular through this equation. Has to be in standard form. So standard form is ax plus by equals c. And then, so when we're looking at this, we have to find our slope first. So this equation is not in the form that we want to identify slope. So before we do anything else, we're going to solve this one for y, so we can figure out what the slope of this equation is. So that means we're going to subtract the 3x over. So negative 4y equals negative 3x plus 12. And then divide everything by negative 4. Okay. So this equation becomes y equals, and we have a negative divided by a negative, so that will become a positive 3/4 x minus 3. So this is the part that we care about. This is our slope. So again, we want perpendicular. So our perpendicular slope, we're going to flip that fraction and change its sign. So it's going to become a negative 4/3. So again, looking at our information, we have a point, we have a slope. So we have to start in point slope. So the y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. So that will be y minus 10 equals negative 4/3 times x minus a negative 7, so it becomes plus. So we want to distribute next. So y minus 10 equals negative 4/3 x. And then if we put this over 1, we're multiplying the top parts together. So it'll be minus 28. Then 3 times 1 is 3. Now before I continue, I'm going to get rid of the fraction so that our numbers are a little bit nicer to work with. So that means that I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So when we do that, we will now have 3y minus 30 equals negative 4x minus 28. So those numbers are a lot easier to work with. So again, final answer needs to be in standard form. So that means x and y want to be on the same side. So we're going to add our 4x, and at the same time we're going to add 30. Okay, so now we have 4x plus 3y equals, and then negative 28 plus 30 gives us a positive 2. So as I'm looking at this, x and y are on the same side. we don't have any fractions, and our x term is positive. So this is going to be our final answer for this problem. And that is also going to conclude section 4.